Welcome to another reading of Lord MEHER. We are in 1933, online page 1507. Rosalie, you want to start us off today?
Yes. Portofino. After some days, Baba held a meeting with the men Mandali and gave detailed instructions to Pendu, Vishnu, and Adi Senior. Those are his pillars, by the way. Pillars
Of Meribah.
Yeah, Meribah. Yeah.
And Ed
Padre. Yeah.
Oh, Padre, right.
Padre is the missing one there.
Yeah.
About arrangements for the Westerners' visit. A complete itinerary for travel through India was chalked out. Chandji was sent to Bombay for the same purpose. Baba went to Bandadara with the close women Mandali for 4 days from 25 to 29 March 1933, and then took the women to Kandivli on 3rd April. Besides Mera, Mani, Naja, Big Khorshid, Sunamasi, and Small Khorshid, Frani and Gulmai and her daughter Dali were also with them, along with Pilamai and her daughter Silla. The Western group had met in Europe and sailed together from Genoa in 28 March aboard the Victoria. The London group consisted of Kitty.
Sure, you got the air conditioning blowing on me.
What? What, Marvin?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking to someone here.
Oh, yeah, I heard you. The Western group had met in Europe and sailed together from Genoa on 28 March aboard the Victoria. The London group consisted of Kitty, Margaret, Mabel, Audrey, Minta, Delia, Christine, and Quentin. The Americans were Elizabeth, Norina, and Vivian Geeson, who replaced Kim Tolhurst, whose husband did not want her to go. They arrived in Bombay on Friday, 7th April, 1933. The Bombay lovers went to the pier to welcome them. Frani and Dina Talati gave each of the new arrivals a wreath of flowers. The Mandali in charge took the group to the majestic hotel where they could bathe and rest. At 2 p.m., the group was taken to Kandivli, where they were in for a surprise. All rushed inside, expecting to greet Baba. Instead, they were met by Small Khorshid, who said to them in broken English, "Baba found, Baba found." Baba had hidden himself in the house and had instructed Khorshid to tell the Westerners to find him. Khorshid did not know much English, so she was repeating what she thought was the correct message. This made everyone laugh, and someone then explained that they were to look for Baba. All participated in the fun game of avataric hide and seek, and Delia eventually found him. When Baba came out, Mera, his queen, and the other women Mandali were with him, dressed in gorgeous saris. This was the first time with Baba that they had an occasion and the permission to wear fine clothes. Baba introduced Mera, and the Western women saw that she was just as Baba had described, pure and beautiful. They were then introduced to Mani, Frani, Gulmai, Naja, Big Khorshid, and Small Khorshid. Gulmai's daughter Dali was not present. She was ill in bed. The ladies exchanged presents with their Indian sisters, and the women mandali dressed the Western women in saris. Baba's love made no distinction between East and West. All felt the essence of unity present in his atmosphere. Sahabas with the beloved began, and the gopis' hearts were moved beyond words. The Westerners returned to their hotel in Bombay at 8 p.m. While with Baba, they had asked whether Audrey and Christine were free to mix with some of the other passengers. They had met on board their ship. Baba answered, "No, nothing of the kind. You have all come out here to be with a spiritual master. Audrey and Christine are both free to return by the next boat to Europe, if they wish. They had to set foot on Indian soil and have done so." And being informed what Baba said, the two young women chose to stay. At 6 a.m. on Sunday, 9th April 1933, Baba took the Indian ladies back to Nasik and then to Bandadara. The Westerners joined Baba there at 4 p.m. on the 10th and stayed for 3 days. Baba took them sailing on the lake and led them on hikes. Baba once especially asked them to be with him wherever he went. As they were returning from a long walk, they saw an unusual sight: lightning, clouds, sunset, and the rising moon at the same time. Christine had gone on ahead despite Baba's order, and he showed his displeasure that everyone was not there to see the view. With a stern expression, Baba spelled on the board, quotes, "If you do not follow my orders, what is the use of your coming to me? If you have come to India for amusement and sightseeing, then go amuse yourself like a tourist. If that is the case, then it does not concern me. You have no idea of the significance of walking with me." As they stood watching for some time, Elizabeth asked Baba, "Do you see very differently from us?" Baba smiled and answered, "Very much so. Though your eyes are small, they see the world. Through these tiny openings, you can see vast landscapes, but when you close them, you will be able to see me." Delia declared that when she closed her eyes, she could not see anything. Baba responded, "When have you closed them? Real closing means that there should not be a single thought in your mind. The death of the mind makes the eyes close, and only then will you see me as I really am." For this reason, I tell you to be ever mindful of me and not to pay attention to outside attractions. But you run after them and thereby lose me. So be careful to do as I say. On one touching occasion, some of the local villagers came to see Baba. Among them was a leper who presented Baba with a flower. Baba immediately took 2 petals off the flower, gave one to the leper to eat, and ate the other one himself. He embraced the diseased man and indicated that he would be cured. After staying in Bandadara, Baba and the group left by train from I can't tell it, Igapuri for Agra on Wednesday, 12th April 1933, Duni Day. There were 20 people accompanying Baba, including the Westerners, Adi Jr., Jalbai, Adi Sr., Chanji, Gani, Ustaji, Kaka, Pendu, and Vishnu. When the train arrived at Nasik Road Station, shouts of Sadhguru Meher Baba Ki Jai rent the air as hundreds crowded onto the platform for Baba's darshan. When the train came to a halt, the crowd rushed towards Baba's compartment with loud cheers. Some fell weeping at his feet, and some kissed his feet and the hem of his garment. An illuminating sight indeed for his Western lovers. Reaching Agra on the afternoon of 13th April, they stayed at Laurie's Hotel. Baba sent Adi Sr., Pendu, and Vishnu in advance to Srinagar to arrange for the group's lodging in Kashmir. After a rest and dinner at the hotel at 9:30, Baba took the group to see the Taj Mahal by moonlight. The gopis were enthralled by the sight of the rising full moon beyond the stunning monument. After some remarks about the grandeur of the Taj Mahal, Adi Jr. commented to Kitty, "There is nothing spiritual about it. It is a mausoleum dedicated only to a human love, a king's love for his queen. How much greater it would have been had Shah Jahan dedicated it to the worship of God." Baba motioned to Norina, asking what she had to say about the Taj Mahal. Norina replied, "Since I have seen you, no other beauty can satisfy or affect me." Baba smiled, gesturing, "And still you have not seen my real beauty and splendor." The next day, Baba took them again to see the Taj Mahal by daylight, and there announced a change of plans. The Westerners had been called to India to stay for 6 months and had left jobs, homes, businesses, families, and friends. Now, after less than a week in India, Baba informed them that after the trip to Kashmir, they would have to return home to await his arrival in the West. It was a shock to them, but as he had done when he had left the Harmon retreat earlier, then scheduled and postponed breaking his silence, Baba was once again teaching them obedience, flexibility, and steadfastness to him under all circumstances. Would they obey him? Yes, they replied earnestly, and Baba was very happy. They left Agra by train for Rawalpindi at 5 p.m. on Friday, 14th April 1933. Arriving the following day after settling in, Baba commented about the place. "In Rawalpindi, there is a man, a wonderful saint, who is one of my chief agents in India. He gives orders to many, many souls on the lower plains. Rawalpindi is an important junction in India, for here all travelers must stop to go north to Kashmir." Adi Sr., Pendu, and Vishnu met them in Rawalpindi at 3 p.m. on the 15th, and the entire group continued their journey in 3 cars with Narina and Elizabeth riding with Baba. During his journey, Baba traveled incognito, wearing dark glasses and covering his hair with a beret whenever they stopped. They arrived at Muri on 15th April, where they stayed for 2 days at the Chambers Hotel. Baba, the Mandali, Quentin, Margaret, and Mabel stayed in an outlying chalet, and the rest of the group stayed in the main building of the hotel. On Sunday, 16th April, 1933, Baba discoursed to the Westerners, quotes, "When love for God reaches its zenith, it destroys the I-ness and all desires and longings. Nothing remains except God and his lover united as one. This is perfection. You do not know what love is. Emotional feeling, intense longing, and sexual attraction are nothing. When a person wants to possess something, it is not love." Baba then urged, "Love me, follow me, and serve me." Kitty asked, "How can we help you in your work?" Baba answered, "Love me and do as I say. Pure love makes one understand." It was Easter Sunday, and Baba visited a Christian chapel with the group, remarking, "All worship returns to me." The sigh within the prayer is the same in the heart of the Christian, the Mohammedan, or the Jew. They are all indivisibly longing for the same God. Muri was a military station, and as Baba and the party walked along the hills that day, they witnessed a couple of British soldiers being cruel and rude to the local people.
Okay, thanks, Rosalie. Meher, would you like to read?
Baba observed, "This is the treatment meted out to Indians, and it is tolerated because the people are poor. Otherwise, in Bengal, Madras, and other provinces, where people are nowadays conscious of their condition, they pay back the English in their own coins. This is the fault of the English. But India, like Egypt, will gain independence within 20 years. With all their faults and drawbacks, the British have some good points too. They have done both much good and great harm. It had to happen. Some of the Indians have been born in England and some of the British are born in India. Curzon is now in India."
Footnote, Lord George Curzon was a former viceroy of India who had overseen the renovation of the Taj Mahal.
I like the Americans best and the Italians for their good hearts, but I don't like the way the Arabs behave. They are the worst, full of lust. For the most part, it was Baba's strict order that no one go anywhere and leave him alone. But he permitted them to go sightseeing in Murray in groups of 2. After going a long distance, Kitty felt anxious and told Delia that she was going back to the hotel. Delia felt the same and both returned to their room. Baba saw them entering the hotel and sent for them. He indicated, "You are the only ones who felt that I wanted to speak to you. I had important spiritual matters to tell you, but the mood has gone now because none of you were here." This was a warning to them to be always with Baba whenever permitted and disregard outside attractions. If one's mind is centered on Baba, outside events have no effect. Even in the midst of events, a person focused on Baba is away from them at the same time. Never miss being with me, Baba added. You will always miss something. He had sent them for an outing, but he wanted their thoughts to be with him. When the others returned, Baba had a long discussion with Norina and Elizabeth, planning for his future work in the West. Headed for Kashmir, the group left Murray in taxis at 6 in the morning on Tuesday, 18th April 1933, and arrived in Srinagar that afternoon at 5 o'clock. As they traveled through the Himalayan region, there was a landslide on the road which had to be cleared before they could drive on. Although Audrey had always had a fear of heights, she recalled that she had a feeling of perfect safety whenever traveling with Baba. She had gotten dysentery, and Baba ordered her to fast for a day, with the exception of one tangerine. She was completely normal by the next day. The men Manley and Quentin, who were sent in advance by bus, had rented 4 houseboats for the stay. The women had no idea how cold it would be in Kashmir. They were under the impression that April, a summer month in India, would be comfortable, and had sent all their warm clothing in trunks from Bombay to Colombo, from where, according to the original plan, they were to proceed to China. Srinagar was freezing, and they had to purchase woolen clothing. Baba instructed them not to buy anything else. Elsbeth had wanted to make other purchases, but she obeyed Baba's wish. Baba took them by bus to various sites in Srinagar and gave spiritual discourses. Evenings were spent in the room where they listened to both Indian and Western recordings. Baba would intermittently explain the meaning of different lyrics when they had spiritual significance. One night, when they were sitting around a blazing campfire, one of the Westerners asked Baba, "How do you know who you are? That you are the source of all?" Baba answered, "I knew it before everything. I came from my own self. One cannot know existence until one exists in that existence." On 19th April, Baba took them on an outing by houseboat to Dal Lake, about 4 miles from Srinagar. They had tea and sandwiches on the way in the boat. With the Himalayas in the background, the mountainous scenery was spectacular, but it was cold and damp. Riding in the lake boat, all had to put on coats and got under blankets to keep warm. Wherever they had been, there had been unusually cold weather for April due to rains. Baba commented about it. "I have turned the key." Observing how miserable the ladies were and to get their minds off the weather and get their blood circulating, Baba had the boat stop by land. All got off, and Baba ran up and down a lawn with everyone. He was full of fun and energy, and this playful time improved their mood. On the morning of Thursday, 20th April 1933, Baba took the group to the Chashma Shahi Gardens, which he had visited in 1930, and in the afternoon to Harwan village in 2 buses and a car. Dressed in disguise so as not to be recognized by the villagers, Baba showed them where he stayed in seclusion and fasted in 1929.
Footnote, one village boy did recognize Vishnu and said Vishnu had been there before with Meher Baba.
Baba has stated that Jesus did not die on the cross but came to India, where he spent many years wandering from place to place, doing his universal work until he dropped his body in Kashmir. Pointing to a hill, Baba revealed, there is a place where two of Christ's apostles, Bartholomew and Thaddeus, buried his body. They had accompanied him from Palestine. Being in one of the most beautiful spots on earth, the Westerners found that a spiritual presence pervaded the atmosphere. An indescribable peace and serenity were felt at Harwan. As they were returning from Harwan, a short, scantily clad man rushed out singing and dancing from a side path and began to run after the car. Baba smiled at him. One of the women wished to give him money, but Baba restrained her. Minta burst out laughing at the man's antics. Baba warned her and the others, do not laugh at what seems to be strange behavior. He is not mad. Baba later informed the group. He is a borrowed agent who has to appear mad in order to carry on his spiritual work. There are 3 other agents in Kashmir, all old men and not the mad type. On the 21st, they rode in shikaras, a type of wooden boat, to the city and went to the movie in the afternoon. Baba sent Vishnu to Bombay on the 22nd to arrange for the group's passage. In the morning, Baba took the group for a walk around the lake at 3 p.m. He took them by bus to Manas Ball Lake for a picnic. The road was so deep in mud that at one point all had to walk a distance on foot and the bus drove empty. It was cold and the roads were bad, but the scenery was lovely. Baba again ran about with them, up and down the lawns, full of fun and cheerfulness. They returned to the city by a different route. Sunday, 23rd April 1933, was their last day in Srinagar. The weather was again cloudy and chilly. But when it cleared in the afternoon, Baba took all to the Shalimar and Nishat gardens. At one spot, Baba abruptly sat down on a terrace opposite to where a few Muslims were praying. Baba gestured, they are lucky to be praying while I am here.
All right, thank you. Meher, BJ, would you like to read?
Sure.
All right, go ahead, please.
Portofino. Jai Baba. While taking his seat in the bus, Baba remarked, there is no place in the world as ideal as these surroundings in Kashmir. Back at the houseboats, Baba instructed Elizabeth and Norina to return to New York. Quentin was to go to Santa Margherita, Italy, and await further instructions. The rest of the group was to proceed to Marseilles and wait for a telegram from Baba about either continuing to England or awaiting his arrival in Geneva, and from there travel to New York with him. The group left Srinagar by car on the morning of 24th April 1923, passing through Murree and arriving in Rawalpindi at 11 that night. All had been instructed to fast that day and they were delayed for 4 hours by a landslide. At 2 p.m. the next day, they set out for Bombay by train. It was a 2-day ride. Baba had instructed the Westerners to proceed straight to the docks upon reaching Bombay. So when the train reached Delhi on the 26th, Chamji and Adi Jr. went to ask the railway officials to attach the first class coach to a train going to the Bombay docks. Despite agreeing to this, the British official made a mistake and began abusing Chandji instead of admitting it. This angered Adi, who began reproaching the man for his attitude and told him to ask for Chandji's forgiveness. The man said he would, but he did not because of the presence of others. At this moment, Baba walked into the office. Upon seeing him, the British official got out of his chair and offered it to Baba. Baba asked Adi Jr. what was the matter, and when he told him what had happened, Baba slapped him soundly for scolding the official. The superintendent then arranged everything to Baba's satisfaction. But it took a while and the train was 2 hours late, leaving Delhi. Baba got the work done by giving Adi Jr. a sound slap, even though it was the official who had been in the wrong. Baba kept the Westerners happy throughout the journey by discussing his plans for times they would have to gather, leaving them no opportunity to dwell on the upcoming separation. On 27th April, they arrived in Bombay and left India the same day aboard the Britannica. Their 6 month stay had ended in a fortnight. Baba left them at the docks and walked away dressed in disguise, wearing yellow sunglasses and a beret. Baba spent the night at the confectioner's apartment and then, accompanied by the Mandali, proceeded to Dahanam, where he stayed for 2 days, discussing his future plans. Before returning to Nasik on 1st May 1933, Baba had wished to rest in Dahanam, but being summer, it was extremely hot and he complained about the milk being watery. Gustaji went to stay for a few days with his cousin, Rustam Elavia, at his residence in Mahin. Mahatma Gandhi was still being held at the Yerwada Central Prison in Pune. Baba sent Chandji there on the 5th with a message for Gandhi, whom Chandji met at 10:35 a.m. on the 6th. Abdullah
Footnote,
Jafar, yeah.
just one moment. Footnote says Gandhi was released from jail 2 days later.
Wonderful. Abdullah Jafar came to see Baba on the 8th. Adi Senior and Vishnu left for Ahmednagar the same day and returned on the 11th. Baba left Nasik for Meherabad on Sunday, 14th May 1933, with some of the Mandali, including Chandji, Kaka and Pendu. At Meherabad, Baba met Rao Sahib, who had recently been in the hospital, and also Sidhu and Kalinga, who were staying there with him. Baba left at midnight by train for Bombay. His visit to Bombay was to have been strictly private to book passage on a ship for Europe. But when he arrived at Manikji and Banus the next morning, there were visitors waiting. Baba was not pleased, but he met the Marker family. Baba then visited Nilu at his room on Belasis Road. A wali was seated opposite the building, and Baba remarked that he was an advanced soul. On the 17th, Baba went incognito to local hospital to see the wife of a close lover. Afterwards, he went to Rustam Ilavia's residence, Ruby Villa, to see Gustadji. On the night of the 18th. Baba and the Mandali went to a firm, Puran Bhakt. Purna Bhakt means the devotee. Puran Bhakt means the whole devotee at the Wellington Cinema. Baba wished to take a suitable boy with him to Europe, and advertisement to this effect were placed in several Bombay newspapers. Over 50 candidates came, but most were too old and all were rejected. Pendu remained behind in Bombay to continue the search. Baba, Gustaji, Kaka, and Chandi returned by train to Nasik on the afternoon on Saturday, 20th May 1933. While Adi Senior draw Jal Bhai, Vishnu, and Chagan there, on the way their car was forcibly stopped at Igatpuri by a gang, and they were badly beaten and robbed. My God. Throughout the day, Baba had been restless, asking about them repeatedly. Prior to leaving Bombay, Baba had told Adi Senior to arrive in Nasik at a specific time, but Adi was somehow delayed because of not being punctual. This unfortunate incident had occurred. The group arrived at 11 p.m. Adi and Jal Bhai bleeding, and both were taken to the hospital the next morning. Slamson Gustaji's brother happily surprised everyone by showing up unexpectedly on the 22nd from Indore to see Baba after being away for a long time. Previously on 9th May, Baba had instructed Chanji to write to Gandhi and arrange a meeting between them. Now that Gandhi had been released from prison, but Gandhi was fasting and could not answer personally. The following letter was mailed to Chanji, written by an associate of Gandhi on his behalf. May 15, 1933, Pune, dear brother Dada Chanji. Your letter of 9th instant to revered Gandhiji was received. He has stopped receiving visitors from the day he began the fast. If Sri Baba comes, he will meet Baba but will not be able to talk or discuss anything. Today he has completed 6 days of his fast, and one may say that he has kept good health so far. Mathura Das Vasanji. Okay. Receiving this letter, Baba had the following telegram sent to Gandhi on 25th May. Mahatma Gandhi, care of Lady Thakur says, Bangla, Pune. I realize the spiritual significance of the great penance by fast you have undertaken, which is going to serve the cause of untouchability very greatly, and am having my nazar and blessings on you. The last critical stage, too, will pass off. I am leaving for Europe shortly, but I am always spiritually with you. Love, Baba, Sarosh Motors Limited, Nasik. Baba and the Mandali went to Mr. Garud's Bangla for a tea reception on Saturday, 27th May 1933. The day before Baba's scheduled departure, Baba and a few Mandali left Nasik for Pune and Bombay on the 28th. The search for an ideal boy continued in Bombay, but Baba rejected every youngster brought to him by the Mandali. Baba visited Nilu several evenings while in Bombay. On 1st June, an old contact came to see Baba, Asar Sahib, the poet from Lucknow, who had stayed in Manzilami. Baba promised to help him financially. On the 2nd, Baba went to Pune by train, where Vishnu had made arrangements at Sadashiv Patil's. They returned the following day after stopping at Talegaon. On the evening of the 4th, Baba went for a drive to the seaside at Worli in a Victoria.
Okay, Vijay, thanks. Maho, would you pick it up here?
Thank you. I think Mahu is not there. Yeah.
Oh, she was just here. Maybe she stepped
Left.
away.
She sent the message, I think.
Okay, Eva, would you like to read?
Sure.
Go ahead, please.
While Baba was away, an All Fates conference was held at the Circle Cinema in Nasik from 3 to 5 June 1933. Baba had been invited and, although he did not attend, he dictated a message in Bombay to Faram Working Boxwala on the 4th, which Ramju read out on the last day of the conference. Unless and until there is a complete realization, which is the goal of all faiths, faith is faith after all, call it blind or call it otherwise. Once God is realized, there is no question of faith at all. Just as there is no question of faith for a man to believe he is a man, because one then, having transcended the boundaries of faith, feels oneself identified with the infinite and finds the one self manifested everywhere. Adi Jr. and Jalpai arrived in Bombay on the 5th, and Baba saw his mother Memo the next day. Baba had decided to take Ramju's 15-year-old son, Dadu, with him to Europe if a passport for the boy could be procured in time. The passport office agreed to issue one if Meher Baba stood as guarantor, which he did. On 6 June, Baba went to the inspection bungalow in Bassein with the Mandali, including Chanji, Pendu, Vishnu, Sailor, Shagan, Ramju, and Dadu. But finding the climate disagreeable, Baba returned to Nasik on the 8th. Baba went back to Bombay on Saturday, 10 June 1933, to finalize preparations for his upcoming trip to Europe, staying with the confectioners. As soon as he arrived, Baba asked Chanji if the final booking of their cabins on the ship had been made. Chanji assured Baba that he had already done so, but Baba kept insisting, "Are you sure everything is all right? Have you personally seen to it?" Chanji again stated he was certain everything was in order, but Baba again demanded, "Make sure, check again that everything is all right." Chanji felt confident, but because of Baba's repeated urging, he now began to have doubts. But it was a Saturday, the booking office was closed, and there was nothing he could do about it until Monday, the day of their departure. At 11:30 a.m. on Monday, 12 June 1933, Baba and the Mandali went to Mole Station and then to the ship. A large crowd of devotees was awaiting Baba's departure. The moment they boarded, Chanji discovered that Baba's cabin on the more expensive deck had been switched from an outside one that Baba had requested to one on the inside. Chanji now realized the significance of Baba's words. He felt bad and dreaded facing Baba, who would have to bear the 11-day journey in a tiny, hot cabin with no window to the sea. Chanji never did find out what had gone wrong. After great difficulty and much argument with the steward and purser, whom they threatened with canceling their entire trip, they managed to change Baba's cabin to an outside one, number 339. On his fifth journey, Baba sailed from Bombay on the steamship Victoria, accompanied by Chanji, Pendu, Adi Jr., Kaka, and Dadu. The voyage to Genoa was horrible. Baba's mood was ill-tempered, as even the new cabin was cramped, and the Mandali were not often permitted to see him, as they were traveling in a different, lower class, and passengers from there were not permitted on Baba's deck. Making matters worse, practically all of them were seasick. Kaka stayed with Baba the entire voyage, although the cabin was small, even for one person. As usual, 2 or 3 Maharajas were on board, but Baba did not wish to meet anyone. To avoid being recognized, he walked in areas of the ship meant only for the crew. Stopping in Aden on 16 June, however, Baba allowed some local Parsi lovers to come aboard for his darshan. On the 18th, he briefly met Nana Bahaj.
Nana Bai.
Bye. Thank you. Jangalwala, who held a high judicial post in Bombay, the presidency magistrate, along with his wife and son. A week later, on 23 June 1933, Baba reached Genoa and was met by Kitty and Minta. After staying for 2 days in the Hotel Astoria Belgrano, they were joined by Norina, Elizabeth, and Anita De Caro, who arrived to drive them to Santa Margherita. Elizabeth had rented the Villa Altachiara, overlooking the Mediterranean from atop a cliff of Portofino's main piazza. Baba, the Mandali, and Westerners moved in on 28 June. However, the villa was not large enough to accommodate all of them, and another house in Santa Margherita was also leased. This time in Italy, Baba kept everyone busy, especially with writing, typing, and other such work. Kitty and Minta had arrived in Portofino ahead of the group to prepare the house. Kitty was to supervise everything. Her brother Herbert arrived from China on 4 July.
Footnote, Herbert's ship had stopped briefly in India. He was met in Bombay on June 22nd, 1933 by Adi Sr. and Vishnu, who had instructions from Baba to tell Herbert to come to Italy and to explain to Herbert that he should not let go of Baba's Daman under any circumstances and obey him implicitly.
Otto Haas Hay, Hetty Mertens, and her 15-year-old daughter, Anna Katerina Rowley, came from Zurich. Enid arrived from Milan. Victor and Alice Trau Fisher came from Vienna. Alice had met Norina at a tea in New York some years before, and they had corresponded regularly. Norina told Baba about her, and Baba had them invited. The group was large. Adi Jr., Chanji, Elizabeth, and Enid were usually typing for Baba and Otto. Elizabeth was also driving the car and doing the accounting. Norina did translation work and correspondence. Quentin handled some correspondence. Kitty, Anita, Delia, Mabel, Margaret, Minta, and Vivienne shared in the household management. Herbert was writing an account of his adventures in Russia and also working on Baba's writings. And Kaka and Pendu were helping prepare the meals. All were enthusiastic about spreading Meher Baba's message. Narina and the Kimco group agreed that it was time for the world at large to be enlightened about Meher Baba, his teachings and work, especially in light of the fictitious, if not ridiculous, rumors being published about him in the newspapers at the time. They also felt that they should let people know about Meher Baba before he broke his silence and manifested, which he repeatedly said he would do in the near future. Therefore, they were busy in Portofino collecting and assembling Baba's sayings and material about the master in the form of questions and answers to be published in booklet form. 4 of them typed the material in the large library, which they were using as an office. Anita and Quentin had lively, jovial personalities and would regale Baba with amusing stories to make him laugh. One beautiful sunny afternoon, as the lovers were seated with Baba on the steps of the Alta Chiara, suddenly Baba looked at Anita and spelled out, "You know, I am both God and man." It was rather a shock to her, as she thought, "I have no idea what God is." She looked at Baba and replied, "But Baba, dear, I do not understand you as a man. How can I understand you as God?" She added, "Oh, look, it does not matter. We all make mistakes. You can call yourself God. Call yourself whatever you like. It really doesn't matter. I love you just the same." Baba rocked with silent laughter and called Chanji. As he shook his head, Baba gestured, "Tisk, tisk. Anita is really amazing. You know that she just said to me that it does not really matter. It is not important to her that I may have made a mistake in saying I am God and man. She is absolutely and totally indifferent about it."
Okay, thank you, Eva. Eva, Mona, what would you like to read now?
Jai Baba, I read from the beginning from this page.
Of the page, yes.
All right. The days spent in Portofino were also meant for play, songs, good food, and roaming about in the companionship of the God-man. Yet, being constantly in Baba's presence, they burned in his love's fire while keeping their lips sealed. It was like playing with and deriving pleasure from fire while maintaining a smiling facade and poised manner at all times. This experience comes only when devotees have the chance to be with God in human form. During Baba's stay in Portofino, the cool moonlight lit up the night and the stars shone in all their brilliance. One evening, it was absolutely quiet around the villa, as if a message of peace and joy on earth was being conveyed to humanity. The lovers and Mandali gathered around Baba, who appeared exceedingly beautiful, wearing a royal blue jacket. The silent atmosphere immobilized them like an intoxicant. The moon shone on Baba's face. The scent of jasmine hung around them, and the songs of
Cicadas.
thank you were heard in the background. It was one of the most timely, most beautiful moments with Baba. Remembered Delay. We just sat there and never said a word. They saw Baba smiling countenance and flowing hair as if aglow with light. Age too was moved. The sun was smiling, and a smile captivated his lovers' hearts, which cried, Baba darling, how beautiful you look. They stared at him, and after a while, Baba quietly went inside. His silent song of love echoed within them, and his grandeur seemed the outline of his form on their hearts forever. Does that sound right? Saint? I don't know.
I believe so.
All right. They went to bed, but how could they sleep? They were absorbed and lost in his splendor. Like Arjuna, the enchantment came from the sight of the God-man's beauty and glory. It was the glory of his real self, a little of which he had shown them that night on the terrace of a villa in Portofino. After staying in the old villa for a while, some of the Western lovers had experiences of quite a different nature. One person claimed a spirit haunted the house and had stood before him, growing taller and taller. One said her hair had been pulled as she slept. Another heard noises. Late one night, with these tales ringing in their ears, Delia screamed at what she thought was the apparition of the ghost. It turned out to be Margaret leaning out the opposite window for a breath of fresh air. The next day, when they informed Baba what happened, he wryly commented, "There is one thing I like about you Western disciples, your courage." Baba did confirm, however, that there was a ghost in the villa. Baba's bedroom was at the back of the house on the first floor. There was a staircase attached to the room which led to the ground floor and out of the villa. Once at midnight, while Kaka was on the night watch, Baba suddenly got up and without putting on his sandals or taking a flashlight, left the room, descended the staircase in a pitch dark and disappeared. Kaka followed him, but sensing that Baba was doing some work, he waited at the bottom of the staircase. Baba soon reappeared and returned to his room. Kaka asked him why he has done this in the middle of the night. And Baba explained, there was a spirit here that was haunting this house. He was a good man, but he disappeared and defied God, and therefore he has not had a human body for over 500 years. Today, I released him so he can take a human form once again. Footnote.
A ghost is the spirit of a person who has committed suicide and remains disembodied and suspended in the astral sphere for centuries. Such ghosts must find a body to possess to spend their remaining gross sanskaras. It is one aspect of the work of the Sadgurus and the Avatar to liberate such spirits and allow them to reincarnate again, proceeding in the normal process of the assimilation of human consciousness.
Okay. Minta again asked Baba if she could stay the night in his room. Sorry, as she had done in Santa Margarita. But Baba did not allow it this time. An Italian boy named Albertino, the son of one of the estate workers, was brought to Alta Chaira to stay near Baba during the visit. Soon after, Baba decided on a short trip to Rome, and Norina, Elizabeth, Minta, Kitty, Herbert, Pendu, Chanji, and the boys, Dadu and Tino, were to accompany him before departing. Baba asked those staying behind to prepare some humorous skits for his amusement when he returned. At midnight, 6 July 1933, Elizabeth drove Baba to the station and the train left at 12:30. Baba was feeling terribly indisposed before entering his compartment, but the time they arrived in Rome at 8:15, he felt all right. Physical illness always seemed to precede any of Baba's important spiritual work. They stayed at the Hotel Elysee, where Baba informed Norina, I want to contact people who are searching for truth, but I will see them today only. Arrange for interviews with them at 3 o'clock this afternoon. After breakfast, Baba was driven around the Seven Hills, Rome, and later all went to the Vatican.
Vatican.
Sorry, I killed it. Vatican to see St. Peter's Basilica. Baba was wearing a French beret to hide his hair, and he did not wish to remove it, which was required to enter the church. He therefore walked around inside, surrounded by the group, concealing his appearance, so he was able to keep his hat on. Baba walked all the way into the great church and stood in the center beneath its dome, turning to face all four directions. He made signs in the air.
Okay, Mona, thanks. I'm going to pick it up from here. He
Thank
then rapidly strode out the west door, not allowing the party to linger to look at the exquisite paintings and statues, one of which was the Pieta statue of the Madonna and Christ, sculpted by Della Robbia, the model for Norina's role in the play The Miracle. Afterward, Baba went to visit Capitoline Hill, the Forum, and the Colosseum, into which he went for a few minutes. Later, he directed that he be driven twice around Benito Mussolini's office. Mussolini was the fascist prime minister and dictator who led Italy into World War II. Baba had asked Narina to arrange for interviews that afternoon, since she had lived with her husband in Rome when he was the ambassador prior to the Russian Revolution. Unfortunately, she had not been in Italy for the last several years and had lost touch with even the closest of friends. For her to call people on the telephone and persuade them to come and meet an Indian spiritual master was next to impossible on such short notice. Narita made a list of the names of 32 persons whom she thought worthy to meet Baba and submitted it to him before making the appointments. Baba glanced at it and crossed off all but 3. They were a Russian army officer, a simple, good-hearted Italian, and a worldly young professor of philosophy. Narina had no trouble convincing the first 2 to come. Their meetings with Baba proved to be cordial and beneficial to them, but the professor's attitude was defiantly negative. Narina once described this young philosopher's meeting with Meher Baba. After hearing my enthusiastic description over the telephone of a perfect master, he decidedly refused to accept the privilege of a visit with the suspectful man, quote unquote. When I suggested that for his own sake, he be a more courageous adventurer in the search for truth, he agreed to come. At the Hotel Elise at 2 p.m., he stood in the presence of, as he so ironically qualified Baba before meeting him, quote, your phenomenal man, unquote. His attitude was arrogant and critical. He coldly viewed Baba, sizing him up as if taking notes for a newspaper article. Baba, in his unparalleled simplicity, affably invited him to sit down. The young erudite at once started the mental attack. He provoked and examined Baba's knowledge from the cold intellectual standpoint of erudition, asking question after question. To this most complicated cross-examination, Baba replied with such clear wisdom and in plain, concise, almost lapidaric sentences that I, who was the translator, felt like divine gospel was coming alive. But the professor remained dissatisfied. He was not in an accepting mood. He was unable to grasp the positive sense of Baba's pure wisdom. His mind was blurred by its own struggle and duality. Suddenly, prompted by an uncontrollable inner anger, he abruptly interrupted Baba, bringing an end, to the relief of us all, to his own awkward position. He turned to me with these words, quote, tell your master that he has not given me any new answers. He has repeated all over again the old worn-out formula for truth, end quote. Baba, who is immovable in his divine bliss, merely smiled with benign humor and instantly solved this embarrassing situation by putting his hand on the excited man's head and looking deep into his eyes, settled the mental storm at once. It was as if the man's life energy were exchanged for a deeper substance. He began breathing deeply, as if stopping the mind's reactive attitude. He became a transfixed receptacle of grace before my eyes. An instantaneous act of expansion of consciousness took place. After a while, he regained his normal composure and he bowed his head to Baba with the expression of a newborn soul christened by divine waters, saying, quote, I know love is the only answer to all questions. Love is truth, and you made me realize it. I now know only love can solve the problems of the individual, of duality, and the battle of life, end quote. Kneeling before Baba, he said, take my whole life and use it. Baba replied, do not be confused, do not struggle, do not change the mode of your life, but make an effort with all your heart to create longing to be one with God. This longing will make you see the self, capital S. Cautioning him, Baba then added, the glimpse I have given you now will not last, but you will understand more and more of the truth. You will go deeper and deeper into it, and in the due course of time, you will be able to be of great service to humanity. After he left Baba's room, he stood for a while before the closed door. With tears in his eyes, he said to me, "To think that I did not want to see God. I thank you for making me come. Please let me know whatever I can do for him. I am at his service." Wiping his cheeks, the professor slowly left. After the interviews, Bob and the group went to Aragno al Corso, a famous cafe and well-known gathering place where politicians and persons in various walks of life sat and discussed the issues of the day over cups of espresso. The cafe was located in the busy center of Rome. They sat down at the sidewalk tables and ordered rolls, cakes, and lemon ices. Baba watched as the crowds in the traffic passed by, conversing with Minta and Narina, who sat on either side of him. As they sat enjoying themselves, a heavy, middle-aged man with blonde hair drove by them very slowly in a red Fiat convertible sports car. Baba later explained that this was his direct agent in Europe, referring to him as Cristiano. Footnote: Cristiano was the direct agent for Europe. There are 4 such direct agents in the world, including one in Asia, America, and Africa. Each of these direct agents functions from the 4th plane and uses the power of this plane for the benefit of others. Baba remarked that the indirect agent, who Herbert had contacted in Warsaw, took orders from Cristiano, who lived in Rome with his wife, but she knew nothing of his spiritual status. Suddenly, Baba was absent, quote unquote, from them, and they all turned toward him and sat still. His eyelids flickered after a while, and he stood up, indicating that it was time to leave. Despite being dressed incognito, several people along the street stared at him. Bob and the group walked to a movie theater and saw White Shadows, a delightful film which Baba particularly enjoyed for its Hawaiian dances. They returned to the hotel and all went to bed, but Baba worked on the higher planes throughout the night. The next morning he remarked, "My work here in Rome is over. It has been achieved more quickly than I anticipated. We have to return to Santa Margherita this afternoon." Before leaving Portofino for Rome, Baba had issued strict orders that no outsiders were to come to the villa for meals, not even the Archangel Gabriel. But that day, 8 July 1933, a telegram from Portofino arrived to ask if someone could come to lunch. Clearly peeved, Baba caustically remarked, "Not even the angel Gabriel, and still they ask." After breakfast, Baba and the group drove around the city. They were in 2 cars and drove to the palace and basilica of St. John Lateran, several of the fountains of Rome, and the Vatican Museum and galleries. Baba literally raced through the corridors of galleries and then sat down in the Sistine Chapel. Curious, Pendo asked him about the spiritual significance of popes, cardinals, and Michelangelo, the artist who painted the ceiling. Baba would only comment, "Today, this place has been truly blessed." It was quite hot after lunch. Narina had arranged more interviews, but the Romans were easygoing and arrived late. Baba told Narina, "As they are not on time, I will not see them." Narina, however, entreated Baba to excuse them, and he saw a few persons. Anita had requested a certain reproduction of a painting from Rome, and Baba went to buy it for her with Kitty and Minta. They all then drove to the train station in taxis, but the drivers demanded exorbitant fares. Tino and a policeman who was standing nearby warned Baba and the group not to pay. A more reasonable amount was agreed upon, and they left Rome by train, reaching Santa Margherita at 11:45 late at night. Baba seemed not to like Rome and was happy to be back near the sea. However, no one was at the station to meet them, and Baba had expressed his disappointment about that. They had to hire cars to return to their villa and had to carry all the luggage themselves. In an ill mood and very tired, Baba went straight to his room. Quentin had a dear friend named Ruano Bogoslav. Ruano, 57, had been an opera singer, actress, and businesswoman. Footnote, Ruana Bogoslav was a strange name. Her real name was Elfrida Klamroth. Ruano had once been married to Ricardo Martin, a well-known tenor of New York's Metropolitan Opera. She was living in Paris, and when Quentin returned to England from India in June, he stopped in Paris to tell Ruano about Meher Baba. Just at that time, two friends were visiting Ruano from New York. Mrs. Henry Bell Gailey, called Nani, and her daughter Madeline, called Rano. At dinner, Quentin told all three women about Baba. As Rano listened politely to Quentin's fantastic narrative, she thought, tired of saying all this in exuberance, there cannot be much truth in it. Then Quentin gave them a photograph of Baba. When Noni saw it, she was thrilled. She cried out, "That's the man!" Rano asked what she meant. Nani replied that one day in May of 1932, she had been glancing through the New York Times when she noticed a picture of a man with long hair. She felt compelled to meet him. This was the same man. It was Meher Baba. Rano's heart, too, was gradually smitten by Baba's countenance. It was the photograph of her Lord, which her heart recognized, even as her mind rebelled. I think we have time for one more page. That evening, Quentin promised to contact Ruano when Baba arrived in Europe. Quentin explained to Nani and Rano that Baba planned to travel to the United States and they could meet him in New York. Shortly thereafter, Nani and Rano returned to America, anticipating meeting Baba there. When Quentin met Baba in Italy, he told him about Ruano, Nani, and Rano. Baba then instructed Quentin to write Ruano, inviting her to come to Portofino to meet him. She arrived on 8 July while Baba was still in Rome. The next morning, Quentin went to bring Ruano to the villa. She described that first meeting. The house where Baba was staying was on a high hill, overlooking the Mediterranean and surrounded by a beautiful park. The moment we entered the gate, I began to cry, and it became worse as we climbed the hill. I was thoroughly ashamed of this behavior, especially as I looked a sight and could not stop crying. By the time we reached the house, I was in a dreadful state. Todd brought me a glass of water, but nothing helped. And then the door opened, and there stood Baba. I cannot remember what I did. I know that I looked and looked at him. It was probably for only a moment, but it seemed to me as if I were looking for ages. I then put my hands over my face and cried more than ever. I shall never forget the kind and gentle way in which Baba led me to a sofa, making me sit beside him and patting my hand. Through my sobs, I tried to tell him how sorry I was that I could not stop crying. He spelled out on the board to Todd, "Tell her that it is just as it should be." I had a great fear that he might send me away, so I asked if I was going to be sent away. But my beloved Baba shook his head no. I was told to come to the garden every morning from 10 to 12 and every afternoon from 4 to 6. I carried out these instructions to the minute, aided by church bells. I cried for 10 days. I neither knew whether I ate or whether I slept. I only thought of the moment when I could return to the garden. Sometimes I did not see Baba. One time he led me to the window and pointed far below to the sea, spelling out on the board, "I am like the sea. Drown yourself in me, and you will live forever." Ruano's tears purified her heart and set it afire, which made her completely Baba's forever. And we will stop the recording here.